A lone cowboy stands frozen beneath a ridge lined with 70 silent Apache warriors. No arrows fly, no threat spoken. Their absolute stillness feels worse than violence. It feels like judgment. 24 hours ago, Elias Vance gave away his only horse to save a dying woman. Now, surrounded and unarmed in the brutal Wyoming territory, he's about to discover that single act of mercy has triggered an ancient law that will either kill him or transform him forever. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's ride into this together. The morning sun broke cold and merciless across the Wyoming ridge, casting long shadows that stretched like accusing fingers across the valley floor. Elias Vance had been walking for 6 hours, his boots leaving prints in the frost-hardened earth, when he first noticed the silence. Not the normal silence of wilderness. This was different. This was the silence of being watched. He stopped, one hand instinctively moving toward the empty holster at his hip. The gun had been traded 3 towns back for a week's worth of beans and hardtack. Stupid decision. But then, most of his decisions these days fell into that category. The wind died completely. Even the scrub grass stopped rustling. Elias's throat tightened as his eyes swept the ridge above. At first he saw nothing but rock and shadow. Then, like a photograph developing in chemical solution, they appeared. One figure, then another, then 10, 20, 50, 70. Apache warriors lined the entire length of the ridge, each one motionless as carved stone, their faces dark against the brightening sky. No weapons drawn, no horses stamping, just absolute terrible stillness. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. He'd seen war parties before, had barely survived one outside Fort Laramie 2 years back. But this wasn't a war party. War parties made noise. They postured. They wanted you to know death was coming. These men simply stood there, watching him with the patience of vultures. "Jesus Christ," Elias whispered, his voice cracking in the frozen air. He couldn't run, couldn't fight, couldn't even talk his way out of this, not when he didn't know what this was. His mind raced backward, trying to understand. What had he done? He'd crossed no sacred ground that he knew of, killed no one, stolen nothing. He was just a drifter passing through, a man with nothing worth taking except the clothes on his back and the guilt that followed him like a second shadow. Then he remembered yesterday. The woman. 24 hours earlier, Elias had been following a game trail through a narrow canyon when he'd heard the sound, a wet, rattling cough that echoed off the stone walls. He'd found her collapsed against a boulder, her deerskin dress soaked with sweat despite the November chill, her black hair matted across a face twisted with fever. Apache, he'd known immediately. The beadwork on her moccasins, the silver at her throat. She was young, maybe 25, and dying. Any sensible man would have kept walking. The frontier had taught Elias that mercy was a luxury you couldn't afford when you barely had enough water for yourself. Besides, helping an Apache woman could get you killed by whites who'd call you a traitor, or by Apaches who'd assume you'd harmed her. But Elias had stopped being sensible the day he buried his daughter in Kansas soil. He'd knelt beside the woman, his knees cracking, and pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. Burning up, probably pneumonia, maybe worse. Her eyes had fluttered open, dark, fevered, unfocused. "Shh," he'd said quietly, stupidly, knowing she probably couldn't understand English. "Just hold on." She'd grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, her cracked lips moving. "Nael Nish, help!" He'd only had one choice then. His horse, a dappled gray mare named Senna, stood grazing 20 feet away. The only thing of value he owned. The only thing keeping him mobile in a land that killed men on foot. Elias had lifted the woman onto Senna's back, his muscles screaming. Then he'd walked, leading the horse by the reins, for 8 miles until he found the Apache camp hidden in a box canyon. He'd left her at the canyon entrance, still draped over Senna's saddle, and then he'd done the hardest thing. He'd let go of the reins. "Take care of her," he'd whispered to the horse, patting her neck one last time. Then he'd turned and walked away, heading north on foot, knowing he'd just given away his only chance of surviving the winter. That was yesterday. Now, standing beneath 70 silent warriors, Elias understood he'd miscalculated badly. One of the warriors moved. Just a slight shift of weight, but it broke the spell. Elias's hand twitched toward his empty holster again, a useless reflex. Then another warrior moved, and another. They began descending the ridge in perfect silence, spreading out in a semicircle that cut off every avenue of escape. Elias's pulse roared in his ears. His legs wanted to run, but his mind knew it would be suicide. "I don't want trouble," he called out, his voice thin in the vast space. "I was just passing through." No response. They kept coming, their moccasined feet making no sound on the rocky ground. Elias could see their faces now, hard, weathered, unreadable. Some were young, barely old enough to grow facial hair. Others were ancient, their faces mapped with wrinkles deep as arroyos. The circle tightened. 30 feet, 20, 10. Elias raised his hand slowly, palms out. "I'm unarmed. I've got nothing worth taking. Just let me go my way." A warrior stepped forward from the circle, tall, maybe 40, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw and a necklace of bear claws at his throat. His eyes locked onto Elias with an intensity that made Elias's skin crawl. The warrior spoke. The language was liquid and percussive, completely incomprehensible to Elias. But the tone wasn't angry. It was questioning. "I don't understand," Elias said. "I'm sorry, I don't—" The warrior gestured sharply, cutting him off. Two younger warriors moved behind Elias, and before he could react, hands gripped his arms. Not violently, but firmly. Elias's heart kicked into overdrive. "Wait, hold on." They began walking him toward the ridge, half leading, half dragging. Elias's boots scraped against the ground as he tried to keep his balance. His mind spun through possibilities, none of them good. Torture, execution, ransom, though who the hell would pay for him? They crested the ridge, and Elias saw the camp spread out in the valley below, 30 lodges arranged in a loose circle, smoke rising from cook fires, children playing near a creek, women working hides on wooden frames. A living, breathing community. And in the center, standing beside a fire pit, was the woman he'd saved. Lianhua. She was upright, wrapped in a heavy blanket, her face still pale but alive, very much alive. When her eyes found Elias, something flickered across her expression. Relief? Recognition? He couldn't tell. The warriors guided him down into the camp. People stopped what they were doing to watch. Elias felt dozens of eyes tracking his every movement. Children whispered. Women pulled their little ones closer. Men's hands rested casually on knife hilts. They brought him to a stop 10 feet from Lianhua. The tall warrior with the bear claw necklace spoke to her in rapid Apache, gesturing toward Elias. She responded quietly, her voice still rough from illness, nodding several times. Then she turned to Elias and spoke in heavily accented but clear English. "You give horse, save life." Elias swallowed hard. Yeah. You needed help. Why?" The question hit him like a fist. "What? Why you save?" Her dark eyes searched his face. "White man no help Apache. Why you different?" Elias opened his mouth, then closed it. How could he explain that he'd stopped caring about sides and tribes and territories the day he lowered his daughter's body into the ground? That helping her had been the first time in 2 years he'd felt even remotely human? "I don't know," he said finally, the truth bitter on his tongue. "Seemed like the right thing to do." Lianhua studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke again to the warrior with the bear claws. The conversation went back and forth, voices rising slightly, though not in anger, in debate. Other warriors joined in. Elias stood there, hands still raised slightly, trying to read body language and failing miserably. Finally, Lianhua turned back to him. "You invoke old law," she said. "Very old. You give everything. To save life of stranger. This means something to my people. What does it mean?" She gestured to the camp, to the warriors, to the smoke and sky. "You are bound now. To me. To tribe. Cannot walk away." Elias felt the ground tilt beneath him. "Bound? What are you talking about?" "You give horse. Your life on land that kills men without horse. You choose my life over yours. This is sacred debt." She paused, searching for words. "But also test. We must know Your heart. My heart? Elias's voice rose despite himself. Lady, I just tried to help you. I didn't invoke anything. Law not need your knowing. Law just is. Lianhua coughed, wincing, and the bear claw warrior stepped closer protectively. She waved him back. There will be ceremony, choosing ceremony. Your heart will be tested. If true, you become family. If false, she didn't finish. And if I refuse, the silence that followed was colder than the morning frost. You cannot refuse, Lianhua said quietly. You already chose. Now, tribe, choose you. They gave him food, venison stew and fry bread, and a place to sit by one of the fires. Guards stood nearby, not threatening, but present. Elias ate mechanically, his mind racing. This was insane. He'd saved a woman's life and somehow triggered some ancient law that bound him to her people. And now they were going to test him? Test him for what? An older woman approached, her hair streaked with gray, her face kind but wary. She set a cup of something hot and bitter-smelling beside him. Tea, maybe. Elias nodded his thanks, and she retreated. Children peeked at him from behind lodges, whispering and giggling until their mothers shooed them away. Men sat in groups, repairing weapons or talking in low voices, their eyes occasionally sliding toward Elias with expressions he couldn't decipher. He was an anomaly, a white man who'd done something unexpected, and in a world where whites and Apaches had been killing each other for generations, unexpected meant dangerous. Lianhua appeared again as the sun climbed higher, moving slowly but steadily. She lowered herself onto a log across the fire from Elias, the bear claw warrior, her brother, Elias guessed from their similar features, hovering nearby. You have name? She asked. Elias. Elias Vance. Elias. She tested the syllables. I am Lianhua. This is my brother, Dakota. Dakota didn't acknowledge the introduction, just kept watching Elias with those hard, measuring eyes. Where you come from? Lianhua asked. Kansas, long time ago. Why you walk alone? No family? The question landed like a knife between his ribs. Elias stared into the fire, watching the flames twist and curl. Had a family once. Lost them. Lianhua nodded slowly, understanding in her expression. War? Sickness. The word came out flat. Cholera took my wife. My daughter. She just stopped eating after her mother died. I tried everything. Nothing worked. The silence stretched. When Elias looked up, Lianhua's eyes were soft with something that might have been sympathy. You carry death with you, she said quietly. I see it. In your eyes. In the way you walk. Yeah, well. Elias cleared his throat roughly. Seems to follow me around. Maybe you follow it. The observation stung because it was true. For 2 years, Elias had drifted through territories and towns, taking the hardest trails, the most dangerous jobs, as if daring the world to finish what the sickness had started. The ceremony, he said, changing the subject. When? Tomorrow. Sunrise. And what exactly happens? Lianhua glanced at Dakota, who said something sharp in Apache. She responded calmly, then turned back to Elias. First, elders will question you. Look into your heart. See if kindness was real or trick. It wasn't a trick. We will see. If you pass, then comes second test. Which is? She hesitated. Sacrifice. Someone from tribe must volunteer to risk life for you, to prove you are worth saving. Elias's stomach dropped. What? No, absolutely not. I'm not letting anyone risk their life for me. Is not your choice. Is tribe's choice. The hell it's not. Elias stood abruptly, the tea spilling. I didn't ask for any of this. I just tried to help you. I'm not worth someone dying over. Dakota moved, his hand going to the knife at his belt, but Lianhua raised a hand, stopping him. She stood slowly, facing Elias. You think you are not worth life? She asked softly. You think because you carry pain, you have no value. I think I'm a stranger. I think your people owe me nothing. You are wrong. Her voice strengthened. You gave everything for stranger. This is sacred. If we do not honor this, we dishonor ourselves. Elias clenched his fists, frustration and fear warring in his chest. I don't want this. Neither did you want to save me, Lianhua said. But you did. And now we are here. That night, they placed Elias in a small lodge near the camp's edge. No bindings, no locks, but two warriors sat outside, their presence a clear message: don't run. Elias lay on a pile of furs, staring at the smoke hole in the ceiling where stars glittered like ice chips. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. This was madness. All of it. He'd acted on impulse, on some desperate need to do one good thing in a world that felt like it was built from cruelty. And now people were talking about trials and sacrifices and binding his fate to theirs. He thought about his daughter, Emma. She'd been 8 when she died, all big eyes and skinny arms, a laugh that could fill a room. She'd loved horses, had begged him every day to teach her to ride. He'd always said soon, sweetheart. Soon never came. Maybe that's why he'd given Senna away. Maybe some part of him thought if he could save one life, it would balance the scales somehow. Make up for all the times he'd said soon and meant never. But the scales didn't balance. They never did. Voices rose outside, argument or discussion. He couldn't tell. Elias closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but every time he drifted off, he saw Emma's face, then Lianhua's face, then 70 warriors standing in silent judgment on a ridge. Dawn came too fast. The warriors entered the lodge before the sun cleared the horizon, gesturing for Elias to rise. His body ached from sleeping on the ground, his mouth tasted like copper, and his hands trembled as he pulled on his boots. They led him to the center of camp, where a circle had been drawn in the dirt and a fire burned despite the morning light. The entire tribe had gathered, men, women, children, over 100 people forming a ring around the circle. Lianhua stood near the fire, looking stronger today, her hair braided and decorated with small shells. Beside her stood 3 elders, 2 men and 1 woman, their faces so weathered they looked carved from canyon rock. Dakota guided Elias into the circle. The crowd fell silent, even the children going still. One of the elders stepped forward, the woman, her white hair hanging in a long braid down her back, her eyes sharp as obsidian. She spoke in Apache, her voice carrying across the camp. Lianhua translated, her voice quiet but clear. She asks, "Why did you save me?" Elias looked at the elder, then at Lianhua. "I already told you, it seemed right." The elder spoke again. "She says many white men would not stop. Many would not care if Apache woman lives or dies. Why are you different?" "I'm not different," Elias said, his voice rough. I've seen enough death. I didn't want to see more." The elder's eyes narrowed. She fired off another question. She asks if you wanted reward, if you hope to trade one life for favor with tribe. "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "I didn't even know if you had a tribe nearby. I just wanted her to live." "Why?" "Because—" Elias stopped, frustration boiling over. "Because she's a person. Because everyone deserves a chance. Because I'm tired of watching people die when I could do something about it." The translation echoed across the circle. The elder woman studied him for a long moment, then spoke again, softer this time. "She says you carry great pain. She sees it, asks if you saved me because you could not save someone else." The words hit Elias like a physical blow. His throat tightened. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. "Maybe," he finally whispered. "Maybe that's part of it." The elder nodded slowly, something almost like approval in her expression. She turned to the other elders, and they conferred in low voices. Elias's heart hammered. He felt exposed, like every scar and wound had been laid bare for everyone to see. Finally, the woman elder turned back. Lianhua translated. "She says your heart is true. You did not save me for gain. You saved me because you could not do otherwise." She paused. First test is passed. Relief flooded through Elias, so intense it made him dizzy. But it was short-lived. Dakota stepped forward, speaking rapidly in Apache. The crowd stirred. "What's he saying?" Elias asked. Lianhua's face tightened. "He says second test begins now. He asks who will stand for you, who will risk their life to prove you are worthy of tribal bond." "No," Elias said immediately. "I told you, I won't let anyone. You have no voice in this, Lianhua interrupted. This is our way. Dakota raised his voice, addressing the crowd. Several warriors stepped forward, each one grim-faced and resolute. Elias counted 5, 6, 7 volunteers, each willing to risk death for a stranger they'd known for less than a day. His stomach twisted. Stop this, please. But the elders were consulting again, examining the volunteers, choosing. Then Elias saw her, a young woman, maybe 19, with a scar across her cheek and determination in her eyes. She stepped into the circle, speaking clearly. Lianhua's face went pale. No. Naira, no. The young woman, Naira, responded sharply, gesturing at Elias. What is she saying? Elias demanded. She is my cousin, Lianhua said, her voice shaking. She says she owes you her blood because I am her blood. She volunteers for first trial. First trial? Elias looked at the elders. How many trials are there? The woman elder held up one hand, fingers spread, 5 trials, each one requiring a volunteer, each one risking a life. No. Elias shook his head violently. Absolutely not. I won't allow this. Dakota spoke, his voice cold. Lianhua translated mechanically. He says you have no authority here. Ceremony has begun. It will be completed. Elias looked around the circle, at the faces watching him, curious, solemn, expectant. At Naira standing ready. At Lianhua, pale and trembling. At Dakota, hard as stone. And in that moment, Elias understood the trap he was in. They weren't testing whether he was worthy. They were testing whether he could accept being worth saving at all. His daughter's voice whispered in his memory. Papa, why are you always sad? Because I couldn't save you, sweetheart. Maybe someone can save you. Elias's hands shook. His breath came short. The morning sun climbed higher, casting the circle in harsh light, and he realized he stood at a crossroads he'd been avoiding for 2 years. Accept this. Let people risk their lives for him. Believe, even for a moment, that he might be worth it, or refuse. Walk away. Prove what he'd always believed, that some men are beyond redemption, beyond saving, beyond anything but the slow drift toward death. The elders waited. The tribe waited. Naira stood ready, her hand on a knife at her belt. And Elias Vance, broken drifter, failed father, man who'd given everything because he had nothing left to lose, opened his mouth to make the hardest choice of his life. But before he could speak, Dakota raised his hand and the real ceremony began. Dakota's hand fell, and the first trial began with no ceremony, no warning, just brutal immediacy. Naira stepped forward into the circle's center, drawing her knife, a wicked curved blade that caught the morning light. The crowd pressed closer, forming a tighter ring. Elias's heart slammed against his ribs as 2 warriors dragged a wooden post into the circle and drove it deep into the earth with heavy stones. What are they doing? Elias demanded, his voice cracking. Lianhua wouldn't meet his eyes. First trial. Trial of trust. Naira backed against the post willingly, her chin raised, that terrible determination still burning in her face. The warriors began binding her wrists behind the post with leather straps, pulling them tight. She didn't flinch, didn't make a sound. Elias moved forward instinctively. Stop this, right now. Dakota blocked his path, one hand pressed against Elias's chest, shoving him back. The warrior's eyes held a challenge, a dare to interfere. You cannot stop what has begun, Lianhua said quietly beside him. Naira chose this. She's 19 years old. She is a warrior. She knows the risk. One of the male elders approached Naira, carrying something wrapped in deerskin. He unfolded it slowly, revealing 5 throwing knives, each blade honed to razor sharpness. The crowd murmured. Even Lianhua drew in a sharp breath. The elder turned to face the assembled volunteers, the 6 warriors who'd stepped forward after Naira. He spoke rapidly, gesturing to Naira, then to the knives. What's he saying? Elias asked, though dread already crawled up his spine. Each volunteer will throw 1 knife, Lianhua translated, her voice hollow. They must strike within hand's width of Naira's body without touching her. If all 5 succeed, trial is passed. If one fails, she didn't finish. That's insane. 1 slip, 1 gust of wind, and she's dead. Yes. Elias grabbed Lianhua's arm, spinning her to face him. You can't let this happen. She's your cousin, your family. Lianhua finally met his eyes, and what he saw there stopped his breath. Not anger, but something deeper. Resignation, ancient acceptance of a price paid in blood and risk. You think I want this? She whispered. You think any of us want this. But you invoked the old law, Elias. You chose to save me at cost of everything you had. Now we must answer that choice with equal weight. By risking your cousin's life? By proving we value what you did, by showing that one act of sacrifice deserves another. Her jaw tightened. This is not cruelty, this is honor. The first volunteer stepped forward, a young warrior, maybe 25, with steady hands and a calm expression. The elder handed him a knife. The warrior tested its weight, turned it over once, then faced Naira. 15 paces separated them. The camp fell absolutely silent. Even the cook fires seemed to stop crackling. Naira stood motionless against the post, her eyes open, watching the warrior with complete trust. The warrior drew back his arm. Elias couldn't watch, couldn't look away. The knife left the warrior's hand in a silver blur, spinning end over end, and buried itself in the wooden post 6 inches from Naira's left shoulder with a solid thunk, so close that a few strands of her black hair lifted in the blade's wake. Naira didn't move, didn't blink. The crowd exhaled as one. Some nodded approval. The warrior stepped back, his face still expressionless. 4 knives left. The second volunteer came forward, an older man, maybe 40, with graying hair and scars across his knuckles. He took the knife, sighted carefully, and threw. The blade struck inches from Naira's right hip, vibrating in the wood. 3 knives. Elias's hands shook, his mouth tasted like metal. This was wrong, all of it wrong, but he stood paralyzed, watching as the third volunteer, a woman this time, lean and hard-faced, stepped up. She threw without hesitation. The knife embedded itself above Naira's head, so close that if Naira had been an inch taller, it would have parted her scalp. 2 knives remained. The fourth volunteer was young, maybe 17, and his hands trembled slightly as he accepted the blade. Elias saw doubt flicker across the boy's face, saw him glance at Naira, then at the elders, then back at Naira. He's scared, Elias muttered. He's going to miss. Then Naira dies, Lianhua said flatly. And you will carry that death, as will he. The boy raised the knife. His arm shook. Sweat gleamed on his forehead despite the cold morning air. Naira spoke then, her voice clear and strong, calling out something in Apache. The boy's eyes widened. He responded, his voice cracking. What did she say? Elias asked. She told him she trusts him, Lianhua whispered. Told him to be brave. The boy's jaw set. He steadied his breathing, focused, and threw. The knife struck so close to Naira's right shoulder that it caught the edge of her deerskin dress, pinning the fabric to the wood. But it didn't touch skin, didn't draw blood. Naira smiled. The boy sagged with relief, and 2 older warriors moved forward to grip his shoulders, steadying him. 1 knife left. The final volunteer stepped into the circle, and Elias's stomach dropped. It was Dakota. Lianhua's brother moved with lethal grace, his face carved from stone, showing nothing. He took the last knife from the elder, turning it over in his scarred hands. Then his eyes found Elias across the circle. The message was clear. This is what your mercy costs. Watch. Dakota positioned himself, studying the narrow spaces remaining around Naira's body. 4 knives already bristled from the post in a deadly constellation. Finding space for a 5th without striking her would require absolute precision, or absolute luck. Dakota drew back his arm, muscles coiling, and Elias realized with horrible clarity that this was the real test. Not whether Dakota would hit the target, but whether Elias could stand there and watch it happen. The knife flew. Time seemed to slow. Elias saw the blade spin, saw sunlight flash along its edge, saw Naira's eyes track its approach without fear. The knife struck between her knees, so close to her inner thigh that another inch inward would have severed the femoral artery. But it held, buried deep in wood, not touching skin. Naira stood surrounded by 5 knives, each one close enough to kill, each one perfectly placed, alive. The crowd erupted in approval. voices rising in a chant Elias didn't understand. Warriors rushed forward to cut Naira's bonds, to pull the knives free. She stumbled when released, her legs weak from standing frozen, and Lianhua was there immediately, catching her cousin, holding her tight. Elias's knees nearly buckled. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The woman elder approached him, speaking directly for the first time. Her voice was aged but strong. Lianhua, still holding Naira, translated over her shoulder. She says, "First trial is complete. Your worthiness has been proven in blood not spilled, but 4 trials remain. 4 more—" Elias couldn't finish. 4 more like that? 4 more chances to watch someone die because he'd tried to do one decent thing? The elder continued speaking, gesturing to the sun climbing higher. "She says you will rest now," Lianhua translated. "Second trial begins when sun reaches peak. You should eat, gather strength." "I don't want strength," Elias said, his voice ragged. "I want this to stop." "Then you should not have saved my life," Lianhua said, but her eyes were gentle. "Come, I will show you what you have begun." They led him to a lodge larger than the others, its walls decorated with painted symbols, geometric patterns, and animal figures that seemed to tell a story. Inside, a fire burned low, and furs covered the ground. Lianhua gestured for him to sit, then lowered herself carefully across from him, her movements still stiff from recent illness. For a long moment neither spoke. The sounds of the camp filtered through the lodge walls. Children playing, women calling to each other, the steady rhythm of normal life continuing despite the ceremony. "You're angry," Lianhua finally said. "Angry?" Elias laughed, the sound bitter. "That girl could have died. Any of them could have died. For what? To prove I'm worth saving? To prove that what you did matters." Lianhua poured something from a clay pot into 2 wooden cups, handed one to Elias. "Drink. It will help." The liquid was hot, herbal, slightly bitter. Elias drank it anyway, needing something to do with his hands. "Tell me about the old law," he said. "Explain it to me like I'm a child, because I sure as hell don't understand it." Lianhua sipped her own drink, gathering thoughts. "Long ago, before white men came, before soldiers and forts and reservations, our people lived by different rules. Survival was everything. Trust was rare. A stranger could mean death, for you, for your family, for your whole band. So you killed strangers first, asked questions later. Sometimes, or we avoided them, kept our distance." She paused. "But sometimes a stranger would do something unexpected, something that went against all reason. They would give everything, food, water, their own life, to save someone they did not know, could not benefit from saving. And we believed that such acts revealed the soul, that a person capable of true sacrifice, sacrifice that cost them everything, is sacred, is touched by something greater." Lianhua's eyes grew distant. "So we made a law. If a stranger invokes this law, knowingly or unknowingly, by sacrificing their survival for ours, we must answer in kind. We must test them. And if they prove true, they become one of us. Not adopted, not honorary, one of us." Elias set down his cup. "And if they prove false? Then they leave, or die, depending on the falseness. What happens if I just walk away right now, before the next trial?" Lianhua's face hardened. "You cannot. Ceremony has begun. To walk away now would dishonor not just you, but everyone who risked their life for you. It would make Naira's choice meaningless. The warriors who threw those knives, their courage, their trust, all meaningless. So I'm trapped. You were trapped the moment you gave me your horse." She leaned forward. "Elias, I know this seems cruel to you. I know your people value different things, individual freedom, the right to walk away. But my people, we value something else. We value the bond, the connection, the web of obligation and honor that holds us together. I didn't ask to be part of your web. Neither did I ask you to save me, yet here we are." The logic was maddening, circular, inescapable. Elias rubbed his face, exhaustion pressing down on him like a physical weight. "What are the other 4 trials?" he asked finally. Lianhua hesitated. "I should not tell you. Part of the test is facing the unknown." "Tell me anyway." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Second trial is trial of pain. A volunteer will endure suffering to prove you are worth their pain. Elias's stomach clenched. What kind of suffering? Fire. They will hold burning coals until you tell them to stop, or until their hands cannot hold anymore. That's barbaric. Is it? You gave up your ability to survive this land, gave up your horse, your only transportation. That was pain too, self-inflicted pain. We simply answer it. What about the third trial? Trial of memory. A volunteer will recite your story, the story of how you saved me and why. They must tell it perfectly, with all details true, or they will be marked as a liar before the tribe. How can they tell it perfectly? They weren't there. They will ask you. You must tell them everything, hold nothing back. Then they must remember every word and speak it before the elders. If they fail, they are shamed. You are rejected. And the fourth? Lianhua's eyes darkened. Trial of blood. A volunteer will fight in your name, fight to submission, not to death, but still dangerous. Fight who? Any warrior who challenges, who believes you should not be accepted. Elias's throat tightened. And the fifth trial? The last one? I do not know. You don't know? Fifth trial is chosen by the elders based on what they have seen in the first four. It changes each time. Sometimes it is a test of wisdom, sometimes of courage. Sometimes, she trailed off. Sometimes what? Sometimes it is a test of the stranger themselves, to see if they will sacrifice again, even knowing the cost. Silence fell between them, heavy as stones. Outside, someone called out, and laughter followed. Normal life continuing, unaware or uncaring that Elias's entire existence had been turned inside out. I had a daughter, Elias said suddenly. The word surprised him, coming without thought. Her name was Emma. Lianhua waited, not speaking. She was 8 when she died. My wife Sarah went first. Cholera took her in 3 days. Emma stopped eating after that, just stopped. I tried everything, begged her, bargained with her, made her favorite foods, told her stories. Nothing worked. His voice cracked. She died in her sleep 6 weeks after her mother. Peaceful, like she'd just decided to slip away. And you blamed yourself. I was her father. I was supposed to protect her, keep her safe. You cannot protect anyone from death, Elias. Death comes when it comes. I know that. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Knowing it and believing it are different things. Lianhua nodded slowly. Is that why you saved me? To balance the scale? One death prevented for one death you could not prevent? Maybe. I don't know. When I saw you dying, I couldn't walk away. Something in me broke and I just couldn't leave you there. And now you must watch others risk death for you, and it breaks you again. Yes. Good, Lianhua said, surprising him. That breaking is the test. Can you accept that your life has value, even when it costs others? Can you let yourself be saved, even when it terrifies you? Before Elias could respond, Dakota ducked through the lodge entrance, his expression urgent. He spoke rapidly to Lianhua, gesturing outside. Lianhua's face paled. No, already? Dakota nodded, his jaw tight. What is it? Elias asked. Second trial, Lianhua said, rising. It begins now. Sun has reached peak. But you said I would have time to rest. Elders have changed their mind. They want to see how you face tests with no preparation. She gripped his arm, steadying him as he stood. Come, quickly. They emerged into harsh midday sunlight. The tribe had reassembled in the circle, faces solemn. At the center, Elias saw it, a fire pit blazing with mesquite wood, flames leaping high, heat shimmering the air above it. And beside the pit stood the volunteer for the second trial. It was the young warrior who'd thrown the fourth knife, the scared boy who'd nearly failed. He couldn't have been more than 17. Elias's heart sank. No, not him. He's too young. Age means nothing in the trials, Lianhua said quietly. Only will matters. The boy stood straight, trying to look brave, but Elias could see the fear in his eyes, could see the way his hands trembled as the elders approached with a basket of river stones. The woman elder spoke, her voice carrying across the circle. She explains the trial, Lianhua translated. Stones have been heated in the fire. The volunteer will take them one by one from the flames and hold them in his bare hands. He cannot drop them, cannot cry out. He must hold each until you, Elias, tell him to release, or until his flesh can no longer bear it. The elder continued, gesturing to Elias. She says this trial tests two things, the volunteer's devotion and your mercy. Can you balance accepting sacrifice with preventing suffering? Can you know when enough is enough? The weight of it crushed down on Elias. If he told the boy to release too quickly, the trial would fail. The sacrifice would be deemed insufficient. But if he waited too long, the boy would be permanently scarred, crippled. This is impossible, Elias whispered. Yes, Lianhua agreed. That is why it matters. The elder used two long wooden tongs to lift the first stone from the fire. It glowed dull orange, heat radiating from it in visible waves. She held it out toward the boy. The boy stepped forward, extending his hands palm up. Wait! Elias started forward, but Dakota caught him, holding him back. The stone settled into the boy's palms. For 3 seconds, nothing. The boy's face remained stoic, controlled. Then the pain hit. Elias saw it register, saw the boy's eyes widen, saw his jaw clench so hard the muscles stood out like cords. But he didn't drop the stone, didn't make a sound. His hands began to shake. The smell of burning flesh reached Elias's nostrils, sweet and horrible. Let it go, Elias said hoarsely. Drop it. The elders didn't move. The boy didn't drop the stone. She says you must use his name, Lianhua whispered urgently. You must command him directly. What's his name? Chaska. Chaska, Elias shouted. Release the stone, now! The boy's eyes found his across the circle, questioning. Then, with visible effort, Chaska opened his hands. The stone fell to the dirt with a dull thud. His palms were bright red, already blistering. The crowd murmured. The woman elder examined Chaska's hands, nodding. Then she spoke again. She says 1 stone is not enough, Lianhua translated. There must be at least 3. That is minimum to prove devotion. Elias felt sick. His hands are burned. He needs medicine, not more stones. He knew the cost when he volunteered. The elder lifted a second stone from the fire, this one glowing even brighter. Chaska stepped forward again without hesitation, extending his ruined hands. The stone settled onto his palms, directly onto the fresh burns. This time Chaska couldn't stay silent. A low groan escaped his clenched teeth. His whole body trembled. Tears streamed down his face, but he held the stone. 5 seconds. 10. The smell intensified. Chaska, release, Elias commanded, unable to watch anymore. The stone dropped. Chaska swayed on his feet, his hands held out like they belonged to someone else. The blisters had burst. Raw flesh showed through. The elders conferred. The woman elder nodded, then lifted the third stone. No, Elias said. No more. He's proven enough. The trial requires 3 minimum, Lianhua said, her voice tight with her own distress. If he stops now, it fails. All of this was for nothing. Then let it fail. I won't watch this kid destroy his hands for me. Dakota spoke sharply, and Lianhua translated. He says you dishonor Chaska by trying to stop him. This is Chaska's choice, his sacrifice. You must respect it. Chaska spoke then, his voice rough with pain but clear. He looked directly at Elias as he spoke. What's he saying? Elias demanded. He says, Lianhua's voice caught. He says he volunteers because you gave everything for a stranger. He wants to prove he has that same courage. He asks you not to take this from him. The third stone came out of the fire, white hot now, almost too bright to look at. Chaska stepped forward. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold them steady. When the stone touched his palms, he screamed, a full-throated scream of agony that echoed off the canyon walls. But he held it. Elias couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every instinct screamed at him to rush forward, to knock the stone away, to stop this madness. But he stood frozen, locked between honoring the boy's choice and preventing his mutilation. 3 seconds. Chaska's legs buckled. He fell to his knees, still holding the stone, still screaming. Chaska, release! Elias roared. The stone fell. Chaska collapsed forward onto his hands and knees, gasping, sobbing. His hands were unrecognizable, blackened, weeping, destroyed. Warriors rushed forward immediately, pulling him back, pouring water over his hands, applying some kind of salve. The boy's screams turned to whimpers, then to silence as he passed out from the pain. The woman elder approached Elias. Her face was unreadable as she spoke. She says second trial is complete, Lianhua translated, her voice shaking. Chaska's sacrifice has been witnessed, his devotion proven. You have shown mercy by releasing him before permanent crippling. Balance has been achieved. Balance? Elias's voice came out strangled. That boy's hands are ruined. How is that balance? They will heal. Scarred, yes, but functional. You released him in time. Lianhua touched his arm. Elias, if you had waited even 5 more seconds, I know. He doubled over, hands on his knees, trying not to vomit. I know. The camp slowly dispersed, warriors carrying Chaska to the healing lodge. Women returned to their tasks. Children, who'd been kept away from this trial, emerged from lodges to play again. Life continued, as if a 17-year-old boy hadn't just burned his hands to charred meat. Elias straightened slowly, his whole body trembling with aftershock. How many more, Lianhua? How many more people have to suffer before this is done? 3 trials remain. I can't do this. You must. I can't watch people hurt themselves for me. I can't. His voice broke completely. Lianhua gripped his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. You think you are the only one who carries pain? You think you are the only one who has lost people, who carries death inside? Her eyes blazed. We all carry it, Elias. Every person in this camp has buried children, parents, siblings. We have watched our land taken, our people killed, our way of life destroyed piece by piece, and still we fight to survive. Still we choose to honor what matters. This doesn't matter. I'm nobody. You saved me. That made you somebody. She released him, turning away. For a moment she just stood there, her back to him, breathing hard. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Third trial will not be until sunset. You should rest. Gather yourself. I don't think I can. You will. She glanced back at him. Because if you fall apart now, you dishonor everyone who has already bled for you. And I do not think you want that. She walked away, leaving Elias alone in the empty circle. The afternoon crawled by like a wounded animal. Elias sat outside the lodge they'd given him, staring at nothing, replaying Chaska's screams in his head. He'd thought he understood pain, thought watching Emma fade away had taught him everything about helplessness. He'd been wrong. An old woman brought him food, more venison stew, fry bread, something that might have been berries. He couldn't eat. His stomach was twisted into knots that wouldn't release. Children played nearby, their laughter incongruous against the weight crushing Elias's chest. One little girl, maybe 5, kept sneaking glances at him, her dark eyes curious. Finally she approached, holding something behind her back. She stopped 3 feet away, studying him seriously. Then she held out her hands, revealing a small carved horse, worn smooth from handling. For you, she said in heavily accented English. Elias stared at the toy, at this little girl offering her treasure to a stranger. I can't take that, he said, his voice rough. She pushed it toward him insistently. You give horse, I give horse. Understanding hit him like a fist. Everyone knew. Everyone had heard the story. Even this child understood the weight of what he'd done. Thank you, he whispered, taking the carved horse with trembling hands. The girl smiled, then ran back to her friends, chattering in Apache. They all looked at him, waving. Elias managed to wave back. He looked down at the horse in his palm, crude, simple, probably carved by a father or brother, but given freely, joyfully. These people were honoring him in every way they knew, and he could barely hold himself together. Dakota appeared as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, his expression as hard as ever. He gestured for Elias to follow. They walked to a different part of camp where a large lodge stood decorated with painted histories. Warriors gathered outside, their faces serious. Inside, Elias could see the 3 elders seated by a fire. Third trial, Dakota said in rough English, his first words directly to Elias. The memory test, Elias said. Dakota nodded. Volunteer waits inside. You must tell them everything. They must remember everything, truth or death. Not actual death, right? Dakota's expression didn't change. Death of honor. Same thing. He pushed Elias toward the lodge entrance. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and sage. The elders sat on one side of the fire. On the other side, cross-legged and waiting, sat a young woman Elias hadn't seen before. She was maybe 22, with long black hair and intelligent eyes that assessed him carefully as he entered. She wore a simple deerskin dress, unadorned except for a single feather braided into her hair. The woman elder spoke, gesturing to the young woman. "This is Kimimela," Lianhua said, entering behind Elias. "She has volunteered for third trial. She will hear your story and must recite it perfectly to the elders. You have until sundown to tell her everything. Leave nothing out. If her telling is false in any detail, she will be marked as incompetent before the whole tribe. Her word will never be trusted again." Elias looked at Kimimela. "That's a hell of a risk." The young woman spoke in clear English, surprising him. "All the trials are hell of a risk. That is the point." "You speak English. Missionaries taught me, before we left their school." She gestured to the space across from her. "Sit. We have limited time, and your story is not short." Elias sat, painfully aware of the elders watching, evaluating. Lianhua settled beside him. "Begin at the beginning," Kimimela said, her voice businesslike. "When did you first see Lianhua?" And so Elias told it. All of it. The game trail, the sound of coughing, finding Lianhua collapsed against the boulder, fever-soaked and dying. The decision that hadn't felt like a decision, just the only thing he could do. Kimimela listened intently, occasionally asking questions. "What color was the boulder? What was the weather? What did Lianhua say to you?" She said, "Neel nish." I think it means help. "It does. Continue." He described lifting her onto Senna, the weight of her body, the terror that she'd die before he found help, the 8-mile walk, his legs burning, his lungs screaming in the thin air, finding the camp, leaving his horse. "Why did you leave the horse?" Kimimela asked. "You could have just placed Lianhua at camp entrance and ridden away." Elias struggled to put it into words. "I don't know. It felt wrong to take her, like I'd be asking for payment. I just wanted Lianhua to have the best chance, and the horse with her meant someone could ride for medicine if needed." Kimimela nodded, filing that away. "What happened after you left?" "I walked north, didn't look back. Thought I'd made a foolish choice, but couldn't bring myself to regret it." "Why?" The question stopped him. Why had he felt no regret, even knowing he'd likely die without the horse? "Because," he said slowly, "for the first time in 2 years, I'd done something that mattered, something that wasn't just surviving. I saved a life instead of watching one end." Silence fell. Even the elders seemed to lean forward slightly. Kimimela's eyes were steady on his. "Tell me about your daughter." That wasn't part of... It is part of this story. Everything connects. Tell me." So he did. He told her about Emma, her laugh, her curiosity, the way she'd loved horses. About Sarah, his wife, who'd made him believe in goodness. About cholera and death and the 2 years of wandering that followed. "You were running," Kimimela said. Not a question. "Yes. And when you saw Lianhua dying, you stopped running." "I suppose so." "Why?" "I don't know. I couldn't let another person die if I could help. Not when I'd failed to save the ones I loved." Kimimela sat back, absorbing this. The sun through the smoke hole had turned orange, shadows lengthening. "I have enough," she said finally. "You may go." "That's it?" "The rest is mine to carry." She looked at the elders. "I am ready." The woman elder nodded, then spoke to Elias. Lianhua translated. "You must leave now. At sunset, Kimimela will recite your story before the entire tribe. If she fails, third trial fails. If she succeeds, you move forward." What happens if she fails? Her reputation is destroyed. No one will trust her word again. She will never be allowed to speak in council, to teach children, to participate in ceremony. Elias looked at Kimimela. "That's your whole life." "Yes," she said calmly, "but I remember well. I will not fail." As Elias left the lodge, the weight of it settled over him like a burial shroud. Another person staking everything. This time not on his worthiness, but on her own ability to honor his story. The sun touched the horizon as the tribe gathered. Elias stood at the circle's edge, Lianhua beside him. Kimimela entered from the ceremonial lodge, walking to the center with her head high. The woman elder spoke, and the camp fell silent. Kimimela began. Her voice carried across the circle, strong and clear, speaking in Apache. Elias couldn't understand the words, but he heard his name, heard Lianhua and horse, tul, and place names, heard the rhythm of story. She spoke for 15 minutes without pause, without hesitation. Her hands moved, painting pictures in the air. Her voice rose and fell with emotion, fear when describing Lianhua's collapse, wonder when describing the choice, sorrow when speaking of Emma. The tribe listened, rapt. Even small children sat still. When Kimimela finished, she stood silent, waiting for judgment. The elders conferred. The woman elder asked a question, sharp, testing. Kimimela answered without hesitation. Another question. Another answer. A third question. And this time Kimimela paused, thinking carefully before responding. The elders exchanged glances. The woman elder nodded slowly, then spoke to the crowd. The tribe erupted in approval, voices raised in that same chant from before. Warriors stepped forward to clasp Kimimela's shoulders, honoring her. She'd done it, told the story perfectly. Lianhua's breath released beside him. Third trial complete. How many details did she get right? Elias asked. All of them. Even the ones you did not know were important. The type of feather in your hatband, the worn patch on your left boot, the way you smelled like road dust and old leather. Lianhua smiled faintly. She has gift for memory. We knew she would succeed. Then why the risk? Because gift is not certainty. There is always chance of failure, always risk. That is what makes it sacrifice. Night had fallen fully now, stars emerging like knife points in black velvet. Torches lit the camp, casting dancing shadows. Takota approached, his face grim. Fourth trial. Now. Now? Elias protested. It's night, can't we? Now, Takota repeated, and his tone brooked no argument. The trial of blood had come. Warriors moved through the camp with torches, their firelight casting wild shadows against the canyon walls. The circle reformed, but this time the crowd pressed closer, their energy different, anticipatory, electric. This was a trial they understood viscerally. Blood and combat spoke a language older than words. Elias's mouth went dry as two warriors dragged a massive log into the circle's center, laying it horizontal on the ground. They pounded stakes into the earth on either side, creating boundaries. A fighting ring, crude but effective. The woman elder stepped forward, her voice carrying across the gathering night. Lianhua translated beside Elias, her own voice tight with tension. She says the trial of blood tests whether you are worth defending. A volunteer will fight any warrior who challenges your acceptance. The fights continue until no more challengers remain, or until the volunteer can no longer stand. Fight to submission, Elias said, remembering. Not death. Yes, but submission can mean broken bones, torn flesh, unconsciousness. The volunteer risks permanent injury. Who volunteered? Lianhua didn't answer. She didn't need to. Takota stepped into the circle, stripping off his shirt to reveal a torso mapped with old scars, knife wounds, claw marks, burns. A warrior's body, hardened by decades of survival. His bear claw necklace caught the torchlight as he moved to the center, rolling his shoulders, loosening his muscles. No, Elias said immediately. Not him. Anyone but him. He volunteered before any other, Lianhua said quietly. He claimed the right. Why? He hates me. I can see it every time he looks at me. He does not hate you. He tests you. Always testing, searching for weakness. She paused. And he loves me. I am his sister. You saved my life. This is how he balances the debt. Takota turned slowly, surveying the crowd, and spoke in a voice that needed no translation. He was issuing a challenge, daring any warrior who doubted Elias's worthiness to step forward and prove it. For a long moment, silence. The crowd shifted, murmured. Takota stood alone in the ring, firelight playing across his scarred chest. Then a warrior stepped forward from the crowd, tall, younger than Dakota, built like a bull with shoulders that could break a horse. He moved into the ring with confidence bordering on arrogance, cracking his knuckles. Lianhua inhaled sharply. Chaitin, strong fighter, fast. He lost his brother to white soldiers last winter. So he's got a reason to want me rejected. Yes. The two warriors faced each other across the log boundary. The woman elder spoke, laying down rules Elias couldn't understand. Both men nodded. Then she stepped back, raised her hand, and dropped it. They collided like thunderstorms. Chaitin came in fast, throwing a heavy punch aimed at Dakota's jaw. Dakota slipped it, countering with a brutal strike to Chaitin's ribs that echoed across the circle. Chaitin grunted, absorbing the blow, and responded with a knee that caught Dakota in the thigh. They separated, circling. The crowd roared, some cheering for Dakota, others for Chaitin. Money changed hands. Bets being placed, Elias realized with sick fascination. Chaitin feinted left, then drove right, getting inside Dakota's guard. He grabbed the older warrior in a crushing bear hug, lifting him off the ground. Dakota's face went red as the air squeezed from his lungs. His feet kicked, searching for purchase. Then Dakota snapped his head forward, driving his forehead into Chaitin's nose with a sickening crunch. Blood exploded across both their faces. Chaitin's grip loosened, and Dakota twisted free, landing a vicious elbow to Chaitin's temple. Chaitin staggered but didn't fall. He shook his head, blood streaming from his broken nose, and smiled. A predator's smile. "He's enjoying this," Elias muttered. "They both are," Lianhua said. "Fighting is prayer for some warriors. The only time they feel truly alive." The two men crashed together again, grappling, striking, each looking for advantage. Dakota's experience showed in his economy of movement. No wasted energy, every strike calculated. But Chaitin's youth gave him raw power and endurance. A knee to Dakota's gut doubled him over. Chaitin followed with a hammer fist to the spine that drove Dakota to one knee. The crowd's roar intensified, but Dakota swept Chaitin's legs, bringing the bigger man down hard. They rolled, each trying to gain the top position, their bodies slick with sweat and blood. Dakota got Chaitin's arm hyperextended, putting pressure on the elbow joint. Chaitin had two choices, submit or let his arm break. He roared defiance and somehow powered out of the hold, flinging Dakota off him. Both men scrambled to their feet, breathing hard now, their earlier speed replaced by grinding determination. They came together slower this time, testing, probing. Dakota landed a solid punch to Chaitin's kidney. Chaitin responded with a hook that opened a cut above Dakota's eye. Blood ran into Dakota's vision, but he didn't wipe it away, just kept pressing forward. The fight became uglier, more desperate. They weren't dancing anymore, they were simply trying to break each other, fists to faces, elbows to ribs, knees to thighs. The sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed like drum beats. Chaitin got Dakota in a headlock, trying to choke him out. Dakota bit down on Chaitin's forearm, teeth breaking skin. Chaitin screamed and released the hold. Dakota spun and delivered a spinning back fist that caught Chaitin perfectly on the jaw. Chaitin went down hard, his eyes rolling back. He tried to rise, made it to one knee, then collapsed face first into the dirt. The woman elder moved forward, checking Chaitin's condition. She raised her hand, declaring Dakota the victor. The crowd erupted in approval, but the sound was mixed. Cheers for Dakota's victory, but also frustrated shouts from those who'd bet against him. Dakota stood over Chaitin's unconscious form, chest heaving, blood dripping from a dozen cuts. He turned to face the crowd, and his eyes found Elias. The message was clear. "This is what your worth costs." "It's over," Elias said, relief flooding through him. "No," Lianhua said, her face pale. "It has only begun." Another warrior stepped into the ring, a lean man with graying hair and eyes that held nothing but cold calculation. Then another built low to the ground, all muscle and scar tissue. Then a third, younger, hungry to prove himself. 3 more challengers. 3 more fights Dakota would have to win. "He can't fight them all," Elias said. "He's already bleeding, already tired. He must, until no more challengers come, or until he falls." The second fight began before Dakota had time to catch his breath. The lean warrior moved like water, fast and flowing, landing quick strikes that opened new cuts on Dakota's face and shoulders. Dakota tried to close the distance, to use his power, but the lean warrior danced away. It became a war of attrition. The lean warrior scored points with quick jabs and kicks, but Dakota absorbed the punishment, waiting for his opening. It came when the lean warrior overextended on a spinning kick. Dakota caught the ankle, twisted, and brought the warrior down hard. A brutal ground and pound followed, heavy fists raining down until the lean warrior went limp. 2 down. But Dakota was fading. His movements had slowed. His breathing came in ragged gasps. Blood covered his chest and arms, making his skin slick. The third challenger entered the ring, the muscular one, and immediately went on the offensive. He knew Dakota was weakening and pressed the advantage ruthlessly. A combination of body shots folded Dakota over, and a knee to the face snapped his head back. Dakota hit the ground hard. The crowd went silent. Elias started forward. "That's enough. Stop this." Lianhua grabbed his arm. "You cannot interfere. If you do, all trials are void. Everything everyone has suffered becomes meaningless." "He's going to get killed." "Then that is his choice." In the ring, Dakota pushed himself up on trembling arms. Blood poured from his nose and mouth. One eye had swollen completely shut, but he got his feet under him, rising to face his opponent. The muscular warrior looked almost sympathetic. He said something to Dakota, probably offering to let him yield. Dakota's response was to spit blood and raise his fists. They fought. It was brutal and one-sided. The muscular warrior landed strike after strike, battering Dakota like a storm batters rock. But Dakota wouldn't fall, wouldn't yield. He took punishment that should have dropped a horse and kept moving forward, kept throwing weak, desperate punches. Then, somehow, one connected. A wild haymaker that caught the muscular warrior on the temple, perfectly placed by accident or instinct. The warrior's knees buckled. Dakota followed with another punch, then another, pouring everything he had left into a flurry of strikes. The muscular warrior went down, and this time he stayed down. 3 victories, but Dakota could barely stand. He swayed in place, his vision clearly unfocused, held upright by will alone. The 4th challenger stepped forward, the young, hungry one, fresh, uninjured, ready to make his name by beating the legendary Dakota. "This isn't honor," Elias said, his voice breaking. "This is murder." "This is the trial," Lianhua said, but her voice shook too. Her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. The young warrior entered the ring, bouncing on his toes, loose and confident. He said something to Dakota, probably cocky, probably cruel. Dakota couldn't even respond, just stood there, swaying, blood dripping. The fight began. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. The young warrior landed a punch to Dakota's ribs that Elias heard crack from outside the ring. Dakota doubled over, and a knee to the face straightened him back up. Another punch. Another. Dakota's head snapped back with each impact, his body a punching bag. He tried to respond, threw a punch that had no power, no accuracy. The young warrior slipped it easily and delivered a combination that put Dakota on his knees. The crowd had gone quiet. Even those who'd wanted to see Dakota lose looked uncomfortable now. Dakota tried to rise. Fell. Tried again. The young warrior stood back waiting, and for a moment Elias thought he might show mercy. But then Dakota made it to his feet, and the young warrior's face hardened. If Dakota wouldn't yield, he'd be put down. The next punch came fast and hard, aimed at Dakota's jaw. It would have ended the fight, probably ended Dakota's consciousness, maybe cracked his skull. But it never landed. Elias moved without thinking, crossing the distance in 3 strides, stepping between Dakota and the young warrior. His hand caught the incoming punch, stopping it cold. The impact sent pain shooting up his arm, but he held firm. "Enough," he said, his voice raw. "No more." The camp erupted in chaos. Warriors shouted, some in anger, some in approval. The young warrior stepped back, looking between Elias and the elders, uncertain. Dakota collapsed behind Elias, held up only by 2 warriors who'd rushed in to catch him. The woman elder approached, her face thunderous. She spoke rapidly, her voice cutting through the noise. Lianhua translated, her voice barely a whisper. She says you have interfered. You have stopped the trial before its completion. You have violated sacred law. "I don't care," Elias said. "I won't watch another person die for me. Not him, not anyone. The elder spoke again, longer this time, gesturing to Dakota, to the young warrior, to Elias. She says, Lianhua paused, listening, her eyes widening. She says your interference changes everything. By stepping into the ring, you have claimed the fight as your own. You must now face the challenger yourself. If you lose, all trials fail. If you win, the trial of blood is complete. Elias stared at her. What? You must fight, Lianhua said urgently. Now, or everything is lost. The young warrior stepped forward, cracking his neck, a predatory smile spreading across his face. He looked Elias up and down, clearly liking what he saw. A soft white man, no warrior training, exhausted from days of trauma. Easy prey. Elias had been in exactly 2 fights in his entire life, both drunken brawls in saloons that ended with more embarrassment than injury. He knew nothing about fighting, nothing about technique or strategy, but he knew about desperation. The woman elder raised her hand. The crowd pressed closer, sensing blood. Lianhua's face had gone ashen. Behind Elias, Dakota lay unconscious, his breathing shallow and wet. The elder's hand fell. The young warrior came in fast, testing Elias with a quick jab. Elias jerked his head back, the fist missing by inches. The warrior smiled wider and threw a combination, left, right, left. Elias backed up, trying to avoid the strikes, but the last one caught him on the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his arm. The crowd roared. The warrior pressed his advantage, driving Elias backward with a series of body shots. Each impact drove the air from Elias's lungs, made his vision blur. He tried to cover up, to protect himself, but he was too slow, too untrained. A punch to his jaw snapped his head sideways. Blood filled his mouth. His legs went rubbery. The warrior grabbed him by the shirt, pulling him close, and Elias saw the contempt in his eyes. This wasn't even a challenge, just a formality before the rejection. Something inside Elias snapped. He'd spent 2 years running from pain, from loss, from the guilt of surviving when his family hadn't. He'd given away his horse, faced judgment, watched people suffer in his name, all because some broken part of him thought if he could save one person, it would matter. And this warrior, this young, arrogant fighter, was going to take it all away. Like hell. Elias drove his forehead forward with everything he had, smashing it into the warrior's nose. The same move he'd seen Dakota use. The cartilage crunched, blood sprayed, and the warrior stumbled back, shocked. Elias didn't give him time to recover. He charged forward, tackling the warrior to the ground. They hit hard, Elias landing on top, and he started swinging. Wild, desperate punches with no technique, just raw fury. Some connected, some missed, but he kept throwing them. The warrior recovered quickly, bucking Elias off and scrambling to his feet. His nose streamed blood, but his eyes had changed, respect mixing with anger now. They circled each other. The warrior was faster, stronger, better trained. But Elias had something the warrior didn't expect. He had nothing left to lose. The warrior came in with a calculated strike, a kick aimed at Elias's knee that would have crippled him. Elias saw it coming, couldn't dodge, so he did the only thing he could think of. He stepped into it, taking the impact on his shin instead of his knee. The pain was excruciating, but his leg held, and it put him close enough to grab the warrior's extended leg. Elias pulled, hard and desperate, yanking the warrior off balance. They both went down again, tangled together, rolling in the dirt. Elbows flew, fists connected with ribs, with faces, with anything they could reach. They separated, both climbing to their feet. The warrior's face showed frustration now. This wasn't going as planned. Elias was supposed to go down easy, but the stubborn white man kept getting back up. Elias's left eye had swollen nearly shut. His ribs screamed with each breath. Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow, making it hard to see. But he stayed on his feet, fists raised. The warrior spoke, the words meaningless to Elias, but the tone clear, a taunt, trying to provoke a mistake. Elias didn't respond, just waited. The warrior attacked again, a flurry of strikes meant to overwhelm. Elias covered up, took some hits on his arms and shoulders, absorbed the punishment, waited for the opening he knew would come. There. The warrior overextended on a hook, his balance shifting too far forward. Elias pivoted and threw everything into a single punch, his whole body behind it. His fist connected with the warrior's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs in an explosive gasp. The warrior doubled over, stunned, unable to breathe. Elias brought his knee up, catching the warrior under the chin. The head snapped back. The warrior's eyes rolled. He took 2 stumbling steps backward and fell. For 3 seconds, silence. Then the warrior pushed himself up on one elbow, gasping for air, trying to rise. The woman elder moved forward, checking his condition. She spoke sharply to the warrior, who nodded weakly, then collapsed back down. She turned to Elias and spoke. Lianhua's voice shook as she translated. She says the warrior yields. You have won. The trial of blood is complete. Elias stood there, swaying on his feet, trying to process the words. He'd won. He'd actually won. His legs gave out. Warriors caught him before he hit the ground, lowering him carefully. Someone pressed water to his lips. Someone else applied salve to his cuts. The world tilted and spun. Through the haze, he saw Dakota being carried away on a litter, still unconscious. Saw the young warrior sitting up, holding his throat, looking at Elias with something that might have been grudging respect. Saw Lianhua kneeling beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You fool," she whispered. "You brave, stupid fool." "Had to," Elias managed through split lips. Couldn't let Dakota." 4 trials complete, she said. "Only 1 remains." "When?" "Not tonight. You need rest. Healing." She helped him sit up slowly. "Tomorrow, at sunrise, the final trial. What will it be?" "I do not know. No one knows until the moment it begins." Her hand gripped his. "But Elias, you must understand, the 5th trial is always the hardest. It tests not your worthiness, but your willingness to continue being worthy." "I don't understand." "You will. Tomorrow, you will." They helped him to the lodge, laid him on furs, tended his wounds with herbs and poultices that stung like fire but dulled the deeper pain. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness, his body shutting down from exhaustion and trauma. In his dreams, he saw Emma. She was 8 again, laughing, running through tall grass. But when she turned to look at him, her face changed, became Naira, then Chaska, then Kimimela, then Dakota, all of them looking at him with the same question in their eyes. Was it worth it? Are you worth it? He woke in darkness, his body a map of pain. Every muscle ached, every joint felt swollen. His face throbbed with his heartbeat, but he was alive. Outside, he heard the camp settling for the night, quiet conversations, children being hushed to sleep, normal sounds of a community at peace. Elias tried to sit up and failed, tried again using the wall for support, and managed it. His head spun, but he stayed upright. A shadow moved in the corner of the lodge. Elias's hand went to his side, looking for a weapon he didn't have, before he recognized the figure. Dakota sat in the darkness, his face bandaged, one arm in a sling. His good eye watched Elias steadily. "You should be resting," Elias said hoarsely. Dakota didn't respond for a long moment. Then, in halting English, he spoke. "You stopped fight, saved my life. You were fighting for me. I couldn't let you die for it." "I was ready to die." Dakota's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Death in combat is good death. Honorable." "Maybe, but I've seen enough death. Didn't want to see yours." Dakota studied him, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You fight like drunk bear. No skill, no training." "Yeah, I noticed. But you win. You know why?" Elias shook his head. "Because you fight with heart. Not with pride, not with anger, with heart." Dakota leaned forward. "This is a rare thing. Most warriors, they fight to win, to prove strength. You fight to protect. Different thing. I was just trying not to die." "No, you try not to let others die. Even in middle of your own fight, you think of them." Dakota gestured to his bandaged face. "This is why you save Lianhua. Why you give horse. Why you cannot walk away from trials. You see suffering, you must stop it. Cannot help yourself." That sounds like a weakness. Sometimes. But sometimes greatest strength. Dakota stood slowly, wincing. "Tomorrow is final trial. We'll test everything, every choice you make. I tell you this because I want you to pass." "You do?" "Yes. At first, I want you to fail. Want you to prove you are false, like most white men. But you are not false. You are, he searched for the word, real. Broken, yes. Carrying death, yes, but real underneath. He moved toward the lodge entrance, then paused. My sister lives because of you. Our cousin Naira was not cut by knives because you show mercy. Young Chaska will keep his hands because you know when to stop. And I still breathe because you are too stupid to let me die with honor. Is that a thank you? It is acknowledgement. Tomorrow when final trial comes, remember, you do not face it alone. Everyone who you save, everyone who fight for you, everyone who throw knives and hold coals and spill blood, we are with you. This is what bond means. Dakota left, disappearing into the night. Elias sat in the darkness, processing the words. 4 trials complete, each one testing something different. Trust, endurance, memory, combat, and through them all, the same question repeating. Was he worth it? Worth the risk, the pain, the sacrifice? He still didn't know the answer. But tomorrow, he'd find out. Sleep took him eventually, pulling him down into dreams of fire and blood and 70 warriors standing silent on a ridge, waiting for him to prove what he couldn't even prove to himself. Dawn would come too soon, and with it, the final test. The sky beyond the smoke hole began to lighten, stars fading into gray. Somewhere in the camp, a baby cried. A dog barked. Life continuing its relentless march forward, indifferent to one man's struggle to find meaning in survival. Elias closed his eyes and tried to rest, tried to gather whatever strength remained, because in a few hours he would face the trial that would determine everything. And this time, he suspected, no amount of courage or desperation would be enough. This time, they would ask for something he didn't know if he could give, his willingness to keep living when every fiber of his being wanted to stop. The first light of dawn found Elias already awake, sitting outside his lodge watching the sky turn from black to gray to pale gold. His body was a symphony of pain, ribs protesting with each breath, face swollen and tender, knuckles split and raw. But his mind was clear, sharpened by the knowledge that today would end one way or another. Women moved through camp, stirring cook fires, their voices low and soft in the morning quiet. Children still slept. Warriors emerged from lodges, stretching, preparing for the day. Normal routines continuing despite what was coming. Lianhua appeared carrying a wooden bowl filled with something that steamed in the cold air. She sat beside him without speaking, handing him the bowl. Some kind of broth, thick with fat and herbs that burned his split lip but warmed him from the inside. How do you feel? She asked finally. Like I fought a bear and lost. You fought a warrior and won. That is more impressive. She studied his battered face. Dakota visited you last night. How did you know? He is my brother. I know his movements even in darkness. She paused. What did he say to you? That I fight like a drunk bear? A smile flickered across her face. He is not wrong. He also said he wants me to pass the final trial. This surprises you? After everything? Yeah, it does. Lianhua looked out across the camp, watching the sun climb over the eastern ridge. Dakota lost his wife 3 winters ago. Sickness took her, slowly, painfully. He could do nothing but watch her fade. Since then, he has been hard, closed. He fights to feel something other than grief. She glanced at Elias. Then you arrive, carrying the same death inside you, the same broken pieces. But instead of closing yourself off, you opened. You gave everything to save a stranger. This confuses him, angers him, makes him wonder if he chose the wrong path. I didn't choose anything. I just reacted. That is the choice, Elias. To react with compassion instead of closing your heart. She set her hand on his shoulder. The final trial begins in 1 hour. You should prepare yourself. How do I prepare for something when I don't know what it is? You cannot. That is the lesson. She stood, leaving him alone with the rising sun and his thoughts. An hour passed too quickly. Warriors began gathering in the ceremonial circle, their faces solemn. Elias saw Naira, her movements still cautious from standing bound while knives flew. Saw Chaska, his hands wrapped in thick bandages, unable to fully close his fingers yet. Saw Kimamela, who'd carried his story in perfect memory. saw the young warrior he'd fought, sporting a bruised jaw and swollen throat, all of them watching him, all of them waiting. The three elders emerged from the large ceremonial lodge, walking in single file toward the circle's center. The woman elder carried something wrapped in white deerskin, holding it carefully as if it were precious or dangerous or both. Dakota appeared beside Elias, his face a mask of bruises and stitches, his arms still in a sling. He nodded toward the circle. Time. They walked together, Elias limping from his injured leg, Dakota moving stiffly from his beaten ribs. Two broken men approaching the moment that would determine everything. The tribe formed a ring around them, men and women and children all present this time. This was the culmination, the final judgment. Everyone needed to witness it. The woman elder stood at the center, the wrapped bundle in her hands. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that silenced even the smallest whisper. Lianhua translated, standing just outside the circle. She says that 4 trials have tested your worthiness through the sacrifice of others. They have proven that our people find value in you. But the 5th trial is different. The 5th trial asks what you are willing to sacrifice now that you know the cost. The elder unwrapped the deerskin, revealing what lay inside. 5 objects, arranged in a row on the white cloth. A knife, its blade stained dark with old blood. A length of rope, frayed and weathered. A small leather pouch, cinched tight. A eagle feather, pristine and white, and a bear claw necklace identical to the one Dakota wore. The elder gestured to each object in turn, speaking rapidly. Lianhua's voice grew tense as she translated. Each object represents a path, a choice. She says you must choose one, and your choice will determine your place among us, or your departure from us. What do they mean? Elias asked. The elder spoke again, pointing to the knife. The knife is the path of vengeance, Lianhua translated. If you choose it, you declare that you saved me not from compassion but from anger at the world, that you seek to balance the deaths you could not prevent by preventing mine. This path acknowledges pain but transforms it into violence. If you choose this, you will be trained as a warrior, taught to fight, to kill, to channel your grief into protection of the tribe through bloodshed. The elder moved to the rope. The rope is the path of binding. If you choose it, you declare that you saved me because you cannot bear to be alone, that you seek connection, family, belonging, above all else. This path acknowledges loneliness. If you choose this, you will be bound to the tribe through marriage. Naira has offered herself if this is your choice. You will become husband, father, part of the web, through blood and vow. Elias's stomach clenched. Marriage? To Naira, barely 19, who'd stood bound while knives flew inches from her skin, the elder moved to the leather pouch. The pouch is the path of wandering. If you choose it, you declare that you saved me as a single act of mercy, but that you do not seek to join us. The pouch contains enough gold to buy a new horse, supplies, passage to anywhere you wish to go. This path acknowledges your freedom. If you choose this, you will leave today with our gratitude and blessing, but you will never return. The bond will be severed before it fully forms. The elder touched the eagle feather. The feather is the path of spirit. If you choose it, you declare that you saved me because you were called to it by forces greater than yourself, that you seek meaning, purpose, understanding of why you still live when your family does not. This path acknowledges the sacred. If you choose this, you will become an apprentice to our holy man, learning the old ways, the ceremonies, the connection between earth and sky and all living things. Finally, the elder lifted the bear claw necklace. The necklace is the path of earned brotherhood. If you choose it, you declare that you saved me because you recognized a fundamental truth, that all people deserve a chance at life, regardless of tribe or blood. That you seek not to join us out of need or loneliness or spiritual hunger, but out of genuine respect for who we are. This path acknowledges equality. If you choose this, you will be tested further, 5 more trials, each harder than the last, until you have proven yourself worthy to wear the bear claws as a brother among brothers, a warrior among warriors. The elder stepped back, leaving the 5 objects laid out before Elias. You have until the sun reaches that peak, Lianhua said, pointing to a distant mountain. 1 hour. Choose wisely. Choose truthfully. Because the elders will know if you lie. They will see it in your eyes, in your voice, in the way you hold the object you select. And if you choose falsely, all 4 trials are void. You will be cast out with nothing. The circle fell silent, waiting. Elias stood frozen, staring at the objects. 5 paths, 5 completely different futures. The knife called to him. He understood vengeance, understood the desire to hurt the world that had hurt him. It would be so easy to channel his grief into something sharp and deadly. The rope called too. The promise of family, of never being alone again. He could marry Naira, raise children, build something new from the ruins of what he'd lost. The pouch offered escape. Take the gold, buy a horse, ride away from all of this complexity and pain. Go back to being a drifter, alone with his ghosts. The feather promised answers, meaning some explanation for why Emma died and he didn't, why Sarah was taken and he was left, why the universe was so casually cruel. The necklace demanded everything, more trials, more pain, more risk, but it offered something the others didn't. It offered truth. No shortcuts, no compromises, just the hard, honest path of becoming someone worth the sacrifices already made. Elias's hand trembled as he reached forward. The camp held its collective breath. His fingers hovered over the knife. Vengeance was so tempting, so easy to understand. They moved to the rope. Family, connection, an end to loneliness, to the pouch. Freedom, the open road. No more obligations, to the feather. Answers, purpose, meaning. But they settled on the bear claw necklace. The moment his skin touched the carved claws, the woman elder inhaled sharply. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Takota's good eye widened. You choose the hardest path, the elder said through Lianhua's translation. Why? Elias lifted the necklace, feeling its weight. Because the others are lies. Not complete lies, but partial truths. Explain. He organized his thoughts, knowing this mattered as much as the choice itself. The knife. Yes, I'm angry. Angry at the world, at sickness, at death. But if I choose vengeance, I'm just spreading that anger around, making it someone else's problem. That's not why I saved Lianhua. The elder nodded slowly. Continue. The rope? I am lonely. I do miss having family, having people who matter. But marrying Naira to fill that emptiness wouldn't be fair to her. She deserves someone who chooses her, not someone who chooses the idea of not being alone. Naira's eyes met his across the circle. She nodded, something like relief crossing her face. The pouch. Part of me wants to run, always has. But running hasn't fixed anything in 2 years. It won't start fixing things now. And the feather? The elder asked. I don't need a holy man to tell me why my family died. They died because disease exists and sometimes medicine fails and the world is random and cruel. There's no deeper meaning to find. No sacred reason Emma stopped eating or Sarah stopped breathing. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. Seeking meaning in their deaths won't bring them back. Then why the necklace? The elder asked. Why choose 5 more trials, more suffering, more risk? Elias looked at the faces surrounding him. At Naira and Chaska and Kimimela and Takota and Lianhua, at the children peeking from behind their mothers, at the warriors who'd challenged him and the ones who'd defended him. Because for the first time since I buried my daughter, I did something that mattered, something real. I saved a life instead of watching one end. And these people, he gestured to the circle, they honored that. They risked everything to prove it had value. How can I walk away from that? How can I take the easy path when they've shown me what it means to take the hard one? Silence fell. The elder studied him for a long moment, then spoke to Takota. Takota responded, his voice strong despite his injuries. A debate began among the warriors, voices rising and falling. Finally, the elder raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her voice carried finality. Lianhua translated, her own voice shaking. She says, your heart is true. You do not choose the necklace because you seek glory or status. You choose it because you recognize that some things are worth suffering for. Some bonds are worth the pain they cost. She paused, listening. She says the tribe accepts your choice. The 5 additional trials will begin tomorrow. Relief and terror flooded through Elias in equal measure. 5 more trials. After everything he'd already endured, 5 more tests that would be even harder. But before he could fully process it, The elder spoke again sharply, gesturing to the objects on the cloth. Wait, Lianhua said. She says I translated wrong. She says... The elder cut her off, speaking directly to Elias in halting but clear English, her first words in his language throughout the entire ceremony. There are no more trials. Elias stared. What? The fifth trial was the choice itself, not which path you chose, but whether you would choose truthfully. Her weathered face softened almost imperceptibly. You spoke truth. You understood each path's temptation and rejected the easy ones not from pride but from honesty. This is what we needed to see. So I'm done? The trials are done, but your journey with us has only begun. She gestured to Dakota. Give him the necklace. Dakota stepped forward, removing his own bear claw necklace. He held it for a moment, running his thumb over the claws he'd worn for decades, then placed it around Elias's neck. You are brother now, Dakota said in English. My blood is your blood. My enemies are your enemies. My honor is your honor. One by one, warriors came forward. Each removed their own necklace and laid it at Elias's feet until he stood surrounded by a pile of bear claws, each one representing a bond, a promise, a connection forged in trial and truth. Lianhua approached last, tears streaming freely. She carried something else, a familiar shape that made Elias's heart stop. Senna. His gray mare stood behind Lianhua, brushed and healthy, her coat gleaming in the morning sun. But she'd been transformed. Painted symbols covered her shoulders, circles and spirals and animal shapes that Elias didn't understand but felt the weight of. Feathers had been woven into her mane and tail. She wore a new saddle, intricately tooled leather with silver conchos. She is yours, Lianhua said. She was always yours. But now she is marked as belonging to a brother of the people. No warrior will touch her. No enemy will steal her. She carries the protection of the tribe. Elias moved forward on trembling legs, reaching for Senna's muzzle. She nickered softly, pressing her nose into his palm. The same horse he'd given away returned to him transformed. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say nothing, the woman elder replied in English. Words are small things. Your actions have already spoken. The tribe began to disperse, warriors retrieving their necklaces, women returning to morning tasks, children running off to play. The ceremony was over. Life continued. But Dakota remained, watching Elias with his one good eye. You understand what this means? He asked. I'm part of the tribe now. More than that. You are brother. When we are attacked, you fight beside us. When we starve, you starve with us. When soldiers come, and they will come, they always come, you will be seen as Apache. You will be hunted as Apache. There is no going back from this. Elias met his gaze steadily. I understand. Do you? White man wearing our necklace, riding a painted horse, living among us. Your own people will call you traitor, will try to kill you. You will belong to neither world fully, always caught between. I've been caught between life and death for 2 years. This is better. Dakota studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Come. There's much to teach you. First we eat. Then you learn our language. Tomorrow, you learn to fight properly, like warrior, not like drunk bear. Looking forward to it. They walked together through the camp, Dakota limping from his beating, Elias limping from his fight, both of them battered and broken, but somehow whole. Lianhua caught up to them, still leading Senna. The elders want you to join them tonight. They will tell you the history of our people, explain the symbols painted on your horse, teach you the meaning of the bear claws. All of it in one night? It will take many nights, many months, maybe years. Learning to be part of us is not a quick thing. She smiled. But you have time now. You're not running anymore. She was right. For the first time in 2 years, Elias wasn't running from anything, wasn't drifting toward death. He had a place, a purpose, a future that extended beyond the next town, the next job, the next bottle. The camp opened before them, lodges and cook fires and people who now called him brother. It would take time to earn that title fully, to learn the language and customs and ways of thinking that were so foreign to his upbringing. There would be struggles, conflicts, moments when he questioned whether he truly belonged. But he'd made the choice. chosen the hardest path not because it was heroic, but because it was honest. As they reached Takota's lodge, a commotion erupted near the camp's eastern edge. Shouts rose, urgent and alarmed. Warriors grabbed weapons, rushing toward the sound. Takota's hand went to his knife despite his injuries. Trouble. They ran, or tried to. Two beaten men stumbling toward danger they couldn't yet see. Other warriors passed them, younger and faster, weapons drawn. Elias saw the source of alarm as they crested a small rise. Riders. 7 of them, approaching from the east. White men, judging by their hats and saddles. One carried a rifle across his saddle horn. Another had a pistol visible at his hip. The lead rider held up a hand, signaling his group to stop about 100 yards from camp. He called out in English, his voice carrying across the distance. "We're looking for a white man. About 6 feet, dark hair, probably traveling alone. Might have passed through here 2-3 days ago." Elias's blood went cold. They were looking for him. But why? Takota gripped his arm. "You know these men." "No, never seen them before." "Then why they search for you?" "I don't know." Lianhua appeared beside them, breathing hard from running. "The elders say we should send them away. Tell them no white man has been here." "They'll know that's a lie," Elias said. "Look at me. I'm standing right here in their line of sight." Indeed, one of the riders had already spotted him. The man pointed, saying something to the leader. The leader's eyes locked onto Elias. "That him?" the leader called to his men, then louder, directing his words toward Elias. "You Elias Vance?" Elias stepped forward, Takota moving with him. "I am. What do you want?" "Need you to come with us. Got some questions about a woman who died in Fort Bridger 2 weeks back." The world tilted. "What woman?" "Martha Hensley. Died of cholera. You were seen tending to her before she passed. Town marshal wants to talk to you about whether you brought the disease into town." "I didn't. I was just trying to help her. She was already sick when I found her." "That's what you'll tell the marshal. But you need to come with us. Now." Warriors had formed a line between Elias and the riders, weapons ready. The tension was thick enough to choke on. "He goes nowhere," Takota said in English. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You speak for him now, Chief?" "I am not Chief. I am his brother, and he is under protection of this tribe. You cannot take him." "The hell we can't. We got authority from Fort Bridger's commander. This man's wanted for questioning in a matter involving American citizens. You harboring him makes you guilty of obstruction. This is not American land. This is our land. Not according to the treaty your people signed last year." The words hung in the air like poison. Lianhua's face went pale. Takota's jaw clenched so hard Elias heard his teeth grind. "What treaty?" Elias asked quietly. "Tell him," the leader said to Takota. "Or I will." Takota's voice came out strangled. "Last winter, when food was scarce and children were starving, some of our leaders met with American soldiers. They signed papers saying we would move to reservation land in spring. In exchange, soldiers would provide food through winter." "And?" Elias pressed, though he already knew the answer. "Spring has come. Soldiers want us to move. But this is our home, our sacred places, our ancestors' bones." Takota's hand trembled on his knife hilt. "We have refused to go." The leader nodded. "Which makes you in violation of the treaty, which means we got every right to be here, and every right to take this man back for questioning." "Over my dead body," Takota said. "That can be arranged, Chief." The rifles came up. 7 guns pointed at the line of warriors standing between the riders and Elias. This was it, the moment Takota had warned him about. The moment when wearing the bear claw necklace meant something more than honor and brotherhood. It meant choosing a side in a war that had been brewing for generations. Elias could step forward, could go with the riders peacefully, could probably explain to the marshal that he'd had nothing to do with spreading cholera, that he'd just been trying to help a sick woman. But if he did, he'd be abandoning these people on his first day as their brother, would prove that the necklace meant nothing when tested against real danger, or he could stand his ground, could refuse to go, could spark a fight that would end with dead men on both sides and soldiers descending on this camp with overwhelming force. Either way, people would suffer because of him, just like the trials, just like every choice he'd made since finding Lianhua dying in that canyon. The sun climbed higher, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. 7 guns, 30 warriors. One white man wearing a bear claw necklace standing between 2 worlds, and only seconds to decide which world he truly belonged to. Elias stepped forward, placing himself directly between the warriors and the mounted riders. His voice came out steady, despite the fear twisting his gut. "I'll go with you." "No," Dakota said immediately, grabbing his arm. "You are brother now. Brothers do not surrender to enemies." "They're not enemies, they're just men doing a job." Elias met the lead rider's eyes. "I didn't bring cholera to Fort Bridger, I can prove that. But if I don't go, people here will die. Warriors who just fought to accept me. Children who gave me carved horses. A woman who should be resting, but is standing here ready to defend me." Lianhua's voice came from behind him. "Elias, do not do this." "I have to. This is what wearing the necklace means, right? Protecting the tribe. Even from consequences that are my fault." He pulled free from Dakota's grip and walked toward the riders, each step feeling like he was wading through deep water. The lead rider watched him approach, his expression unreadable. When Elias got within 10 feet, the man spoke quietly enough that the warriors couldn't hear. "You know what you're walking into, son." "No idea, but I know what I'm walking away from if I don't." The rider nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I don't think you brought the sickness. Martha Hensley was dying before you ever set foot in Bridger. But the marshal's scared, whole town's scared. They need someone to blame. And I'm convenient. White man who tends to sick Indians and then shows up in town right when cholera hits? Yeah, you're real convenient," the rider gestured to his men. "We'll take you back peaceful. You answer their questions honest, you'll probably be fine." "Probably. That's the best I can offer." Elias turned back toward the camp. Dakota stood rigid, his face twisted with frustration. Lianhua had tears streaming down her cheeks. The woman elder watched from the edge of the crowd, her ancient eyes seeing something Elias couldn't name. "I'll come back," Elias called to them. "I promise. I'll answer their questions and I'll come back." "White man's promise means nothing," Dakota shouted back. "Then I'll break the pattern." He moved toward the riders, but before he could mount one of their horses, a sound stopped him cold. The thunder of hoofbeats coming fast from the north. Everyone turned to look. A rider appeared over the ridge, pushing his horse hard, dust billowing behind him. Not a warrior from the camp. Not one of the 7 white men. Someone else entirely. The rider pulled up hard, his horse lathered and blowing. The man was maybe 50, weathered and lean, wearing a federal marshal's badge that caught the sunlight. "Hold up," he called out, breathing hard. "Nobody moves. Nobody shoots." The lead rider from Fort Bridger straightened in his saddle. "Marshal Brennan, what are you doing here? Stopping you from making a mistake that'll get people killed and start a war nobody wants." Marshal Brennan dismounted, his movements stiff from hard riding. He pulled a paper from his coat. "Got word you boys were heading this way to collect Elias Vance." "That's right. Marshal Warren sent us." "Marshal Warren's an idiot who panicked." Brennan walked toward them, holding up the paper. "This is a deposition from Doc Hadley in Fort Bridger. He examined Martha Hensley's body, examined the other cholera victims, traced the outbreak back to a water pump on the south side of town. Contaminated well. Had nothing to do with Indians or anyone who tended to Indians." The lead rider's face went slack. But Marshal Warren said what scared townsfolk wanted to hear. Easier to blame an outsider than admit their own well-killed 3 people. Brennan looked at Elias. "You Vance?" "I am." "You treat Martha Hensley before she died?" "I did. Gave her water, tried to keep her comfortable. She passed 2 days after I left town." "And before that you helped an Apache woman. Gave her your horse?" "Yes." Brennan studied him for a long moment. "You got a habit of helping folks, seems like." "Seems like it gets me in trouble." "Usually does." Brennan turned back to the riders. "You boys head back to Fort Bridger. Tell Marshal Warren the investigation's closed. The real culprit was bad water and worse luck. Vance here is cleared of any wrongdoing. But we came all this way, and now you're going all the way back. Move." The riders exchanged glances, clearly unhappy, but a federal marshal outranked a town marshal. They turned their horses and began the ride back east, grumbling but compliant. Brennan waited until they were out of earshot before speaking again. "You can relax now, Vance. They're gone. Elias felt his knees go weak with relief. Behind him, he heard the warriors lowering their weapons, heard Lianhua's shaky exhale. "Why'd you ride all this way?" Elias asked. "You could have just sent word." "Could have, but I wanted to see something for myself." Brennan gestured to the camp, to the warriors, to the bear claw necklace around Elias's neck. Heard stories about a white man who joined up with the Apache, who went through their trials. Wanted to see if it was true. "It's true. Why?" It was the same question everyone kept asking. Why help Lianhua? Why go through the trials? Why choose the hardest path? Elias was tired of explaining, but Brennan's eyes held genuine curiosity, not judgment. "Because I was tired of death following me around. Thought maybe if I saved a life instead of watching one end, something would change." "Did it?" Elias looked back at the camp, at Dakota standing with his warriors, at Lianhua wiping tears from her face, at children peeking around lodges, at women returning to their cook fires, at Senna waiting with her painted symbols and feathered mane. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think it did." Brennan nodded slowly. "Good. Because you need to understand something, Vance. That treaty these folks signed, it's real. And the Army's not going to wait forever for compliance. Come spring thaw, soldiers will arrive to force the move to reservation land. How long do we have?" "We? How long do we have?" Brennan's eyes sharpened with respect. "Maybe 2 months. 3 if the snows hold. After that..." He didn't finish. "Can the treaty be renegotiated?" "Not likely. Too many settlers wanting this land, too much pressure from Washington. Best you can hope for is getting decent terms on the reservation. Good land, fair rations, maybe some autonomy." "That's not much hope." "No," Brennan agreed. "It's not. But it's better than getting slaughtered when the cavalry comes." He mounted his horse, looking down at Elias. "You picked a hard people to stand with, Vance. They've got pride that won't bend and a way of life that's ending whether they accept it or not. Being their brother means watching that end with them." "I know." "Do you? Really know what you've signed up for?" Elias met his gaze steadily. "I watched my family die and couldn't do anything about it. At least this time I'll die trying to help. Hopefully it won't come to that." Brennan touched his hat brim. "I'll do what I can from my end. Try to buy you time. But Vance, don't waste it. Use these months to prepare them. Help them understand that surviving means adapting." He rode away, leaving Elias standing alone between 2 worlds, the white world he'd been born into and the Apache world he'd chosen to join. Dakota approached slowly, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "You were going to surrender, going to let them take you." "I was trying to protect the tribe." "By abandoning us? By preventing bloodshed?" Dakota was silent for a moment, his good eye studying Elias intently. Then something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but close. "You think like warrior now. First instinct is to sacrifice yourself for the group." He gripped Elias's shoulder. "But you must also learn that sometimes fighting is the only way to protect. Sometimes surrender is just slow death. The marshal said we have 2 months before soldiers come." "I heard." Dakota's grip tightened. "Then we have 2 months to prepare. Come. The elders will want to discuss this." They walked back into camp together, Lianhua falling into step beside them. She'd stopped crying, but her eyes were still wet. "I thought you were leaving," she said quietly. "Thought you would choose your own people over us." "I did choose my own people. You're my people now. Even though we face impossible choice, move to reservation or die fighting. Especially because of that. You honored me when I had nothing to offer. Least I can do is stand with you when things get hard." The camp had resumed normal activity, but there was a tension beneath the surface that hadn't been there before. People moved with purpose. Conversations were quieter, more urgent. News of the soldiers coming had spread faster than fire. The 3 elders waited in the ceremonial lodge, their faces grave. When Elias entered with Dakota and Lianhua, the woman elder gestured for them to sit. She spoke in Apache, her voice heavy with age and sorrow. Lianhua translated, though Elias was beginning to recognize some words now. "She says the time we feared has come. The soldiers will arrive in spring to force us onto reservation land in the Eastern Territories. Land we do not know. land where our ancestors do not rest, land where we cannot live as we have always lived. What are the options? Elias asked. The elder spoke again, counting on her fingers. 1-1. We go peacefully. Accept the reservation, take what terms we can negotiate, try to preserve our people even if we cannot preserve our way of life. The second male elder spoke, his voice sharp with anger. 2. We fight. Refuse to move. Make the soldiers pay in blood for every foot of land they take. Die as free people rather than live as prisoners. The woman elder spoke again, softer now. 3. We scatter. Break into small groups, disappear into the mountains and canyons where soldiers cannot follow. Live as hunted people, always running but never captured. None of those are good, Elias said. No, all are forms of dying, forms. We choose only how we die. Slowly on reservation, quickly in battle, or piece by piece in hiding. Dakota spoke then, his voice cutting through the despair. Lianhua translated, though she clearly agreed with his words. He says there might be a fourth option. He says we negotiate from strength, not weakness. Show the army that forcing us will cost them more than any land is worth. Make them want to offer better terms. How? Elias asked. By proving we are organized, unified, capable of defending ourselves but willing to talk. Dakota looked at Elias. You are white man who speaks our language now, who wears our necklace. You can be bridge between worlds. Speak to soldiers in their tongue. Make them see us as people, not as obstacles. You think they'll listen? No, but worth trying before we choose death. The woman elder spoke again, addressing Elias directly. Lianhua translated. She asks if you will do this, if you will stand between your birth people and your chosen people and try to find path that spares both. The weight of it settled on Elias's shoulders like a physical thing. They were asking him to somehow negotiate a miracle, to convince an army that wanted this land to accept something less, to convince a people who valued freedom above all else to accept limitations, to find middle ground where none existed. It was impossible, but then everything since finding Lianhua dying in that canyon had been impossible. I'll try, he said. I can't promise success, but I'll try. The elders nodded, seeming to have expected this answer. Over the following weeks, the camp transformed. Warriors trained harder, refining skills that had kept them alive for generations. Women worked to preserve extra food, to prepare supplies for whatever was coming. Children were taught to be silent when needed, to hide quickly, to survive. And Elias learned. He learned the Apache language, spending hours each day with Kimimela, who had the patience to repeat phrases until they stuck. He learned the customs, the protocols, the unspoken rules that govern daily life. He learned to read the land the way the warriors did, to see which plants were edible, which tracks meant danger, which weather signs meant it was time to move. Dakota taught him to fight properly, to move like a warrior instead of a drunk bear. The lessons were brutal, leaving Elias bruised and gasping, but gradually his body learned what his mind couldn't quite grasp. How to balance, how to strike, how to defend. More importantly, he learned the stories, the history of the people he joined, their migrations and battles, their heroes and tragedies. He learned about the sacred places scattered across this land, the springs where spirits dwelled, the mountains where vision quests happened, the caves where ancestors were buried. And he understood, finally, what the soldiers were really asking. They weren't just demanding the tribe move to different land. They were demanding they abandon their entire spiritual geography, everything that connected them to the world and to their past. It was, in every way that mattered, asking them to stop being who they were. 2 months passed faster than seemed possible. The snows melted. The rivers ran high with runoff. Spring arrived with flowers and birdsong and inevitably riders on the horizon. But these weren't 7 men with rifles. This was a full cavalry detachment, 40 soldiers in formation, led by a captain whose face held the kind of certainty that came from never being told no. The tribe had known they were coming for 3 days. Scouts had tracked their approach, reporting their numbers, their weapons, their pace. By the time the cavalry reached the canyon's entrance, the camp was ready, not for war, for negotiation. Warriors stood in formation, weapons visible but not drawn. Women and children waited behind them, quiet and watchful. The three elders sat at the center, dignified and calm. And Elias stood beside Dakota, wearing his bear claw necklace, ready to translate. The cavalry captain rode forward, flanked by his lieutenant and Marshal Brennan, who'd apparently come along to observe. The captain's eyes swept the assembled tribe, calculating numbers and threat level. "I am Captain Hendricks," he announced in a voice used to being obeyed. "I'm here under orders from the territorial governor to escort you to the reservation designated in last year's treaty. You have 2 days to gather your belongings and prepare to move." Elias stepped forward before anyone could respond. "Captain, my name is Elias Vance. I speak for the tribe as translator and intermediary." Hendricks's eyes narrowed. "You're white." "Yes, sir, but I've been adopted into the tribe. I understand both sides of this situation." "Then you understand they need to move. The treaty is law." "I understand the treaty exists. I also understand it was signed under duress during a harsh winter when children were starving and promises of food were made. A treaty is a treaty regardless of circumstances." "Perhaps. But perhaps there's room for discussion about terms, about which reservation land, about what resources will be provided, about how much autonomy the tribe retains." Hendrick's face hardened. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to enforce compliance." The woman elder spoke then, her voice carrying across the space. Elias translated her words carefully. "She says her people have lived on this land for longer than any white man can measure. Their ancestors are buried here. Their sacred places are here. She asks what right you have to demand they abandon everything that makes them who they are." "The right of treaty and law," Hendricks said flatly. "And if necessary, the right of superior force," Dakota spoke, his voice hard as stone. Elias translated. "He says you have 40 soldiers. They have 60 warriors. In these canyons, on this land they know like breathing, your superior force means nothing. You would die here, and more soldiers would come, and more warriors would die, and in the end everyone loses except the land, which will drink blood regardless of who spills it." Hendricks's hand moved toward his sidearm. His lieutenant tensed. The warriors' hands moved toward their weapons. In that moment, balanced on the edge of violence, Marshal Brennan spoke. "Captain, might I have a word? Privately?" Hendricks glared at him but nodded. They dismounted and walked a short distance away, far enough for privacy but close enough that Elias could see Brennan's gestures, see him pointing to the warriors, to the terrain, to his own badge. The conversation lasted 5 minutes. When they returned, Hendricks's face had shifted from certainty to calculation. "Marshal Brennan has reminded me of some relevant facts," he said stiffly, "including that rushing into conflict without exploring all options typically results in unnecessary casualties on both sides." "Meaning?" Elias asked. "Meaning I'm authorized to offer a 48-hour negotiation period. If we can reach acceptable terms, the tribe moves peacefully. If not..." He left the threat hanging. The woman elder spoke again. Elias translated. "She says 48 hours to discuss generations of history is insulting, but it is more than they expected. She accepts." And so the negotiations began. They took place in a large lodge hastily erected at neutral ground between the camp and the soldiers' position. The 3 elders sat on one side, Captain Hendricks, Marshal Brennan, and the lieutenant sat on the other. Elias stood in the middle, translating, occasionally offering his own observations when asked. The first day was brutal. Hendricks demanded full compliance with the original treaty, immediate relocation to the designated reservation land, surrender of all weapons, acceptance of government rations, and oversight. The elders refused each point. They would not disarm. They would not surrender autonomy. They would not move to land that meant spiritual death. By sunset, no progress had been made. Both sides retreated to consider positions. Elias walked with Dakota back to camp, his head pounding from hours of translation and tension. "This is pointless," Dakota said bitterly. "He will not bend. We will not bend. Tomorrow will be same." "Maybe. But we're still talking. That's better than fighting." "Talking that leads nowhere is just slow path to same fight." They reached the camp to find Lianhua waiting, her face troubled. "What is it?" Elias asked. "Some of the young warriors are angry. They say negotiating is weakness. They want to attack the soldiers tonight, while they sleep, End this before we are forced to choose shame or death." Elias's blood went cold. "If they do that, the army will send 10 times as many soldiers. We'll hunt down every member of this tribe." "I know, but they are young. They see only dishonor in bending to white man's demands. Can the elders stop them?" "They will try. But young men do not always listen to elders." That night, Elias barely slept. He lay in his lodge, listening to voices arguing in the darkness, hearing the anger and fear and desperation that came from people facing impossible choices. Just before dawn, he heard movement outside. Quiet. Stealthy. The kind of movement warriors made when they didn't want to be heard. He slipped out of the lodge to find 6 young warriors, faces painted for battle, moving toward the soldiers' camp with weapons drawn. Elias stepped into their path. The lead warrior, the same young man Elias had fought in the trial of blood, stopped short, his eyes blazing. "Move, white man." "No." "You do not give orders here." "I'm not giving orders. I'm asking you to think. You kill those soldiers, you doom everyone in this camp. Every child, every elder, every person who fought to accept me, and every person I've come to love. Better to die fighting than live as prisoners." "Is it? You ever been a prisoner?" "I have. I've been a prisoner to grief for 2 years. It didn't kill me. It just made every day a slow torture. Death would have been easier, but you know what freed me? Choosing to live differently. Choosing to save a life instead of watching one end." The young warrior's hand trembled on his knife hilt. "The white soldiers will not negotiate in good faith. They will take everything." "Maybe. Probably. But if you attack tonight, you guarantee it. You end any chance, however small, of finding a different path." "There is no different path." "Then prove it. Give negotiations one more day. Let the elders try. And if it fails, if Hendricks refuses to bend at all, then you'll have tried everything before choosing violence." The warriors exchanged glances. In their eyes, Elias saw the same desperate need for action that he'd felt standing over Emma's grave, wanting to fight something, anything, to make the pain stop. Finally, the young warrior lowered his knife. "One more day," he said. "But if they offer nothing, we do not wait for them to force us. We choose how we die." "Fair enough." They melted back into the darkness, leaving Elias standing alone in the pre-dawn cold, shaking with adrenaline and relief. The second day of negotiations began with both sides entrenched in their positions. But something had shifted. Hendricks seemed slightly less rigid, asking questions about why certain terms were unacceptable, listening to the answers instead of dismissing them immediately. Marshal Brennan worked quietly behind the scenes, suggesting compromises, pointing out middle ground. And slowly, incrementally, a framework emerged. The tribe would move, but not to the distant reservation originally designated. Instead, to land only 50 miles east, still within the territory they considered home, still close to some sacred sites. They would retain limited autonomy, self-governance in internal matters, the right to practice their traditions and ceremonies. They would accept a military presence nearby, but not within the reservation itself. Soldiers would monitor from a distance, intervening only if the treaty was violated. They would not surrender all weapons. Warriors could keep traditional arms for hunting and defense, but agreed not to stockpile firearms beyond what was necessary for survival. It wasn't what anyone wanted. The tribe was still losing most of their land, still accepting restrictions on their freedom. The army was still facing an armed population that could potentially resist, but it was something neither side could achieve through violence. A compromise forged from mutual exhaustion and the realization that the alternative was too costly. As the sun set on the second day, the woman elder spoke the words that sealed the agreement. Elias translated them for Captain Hendricks. She says her people accept these terms, not because they are good, but because they allow the people to survive. And survival, however limited, is better than noble extinction. Hendricks nodded stiffly. "I'll send word to the territorial governor. The paperwork will be drawn up within the week. You have 1 month to prepare for the move." He stood, offering his hand to the woman elder. She looked at it for a long moment, this gesture from a culture not her own, this symbol of agreement she didn't truly accept, then took it. The soldiers left the next morning, heading back to report the successful negotiation. Marshal Brennan lingered, speaking quietly with Elias before mounting his horse. "You did good work here, Vance. Prevented a massacre." I just translated. You did more than that. You stood between two groups ready to kill each other and convinced them both that living was better than dying righteously. He paused. But you know this is just temporary, right? This agreement buys time, maybe 5 years, maybe 10. But eventually the pressure will build again. More settlers, more demands, more restrictions. I know. And you're staying anyway? I'm staying anyway. Brennan shook his head, something like admiration in his eyes. You're either the bravest man I've met or the most foolish. Probably both. The marshal rode away, leaving Elias standing at the canyon's entrance, looking out at the land that would soon be lost, but for now was still home. The month that followed was both celebration and mourning. The tribe prepared to move, packing belongings, performing ceremonies at sacred sites they were leaving behind, saying goodbye to a way of life that was ending. But there was also relief. The immediate threat had passed. Children would not watch their parents die in battle. Elders would not see their people scattered to the winds. They would survive, even if survival meant compromise. Elias worked alongside everyone else, helping to dismantle lodges, to pack supplies, to prepare for the journey east. His hands, once soft from years of drifting, had grown calloused from labor. His skin had darkened from constant sun. His Apache had improved to the point where he could have full conversations without Lianhua translating. He had become, in ways he couldn't fully articulate, part of the fabric of this community. On the last night before the move, Lianhua found him sitting alone on the ridge, where he'd first seen 70 warriors standing in silent judgment. She sat beside him without speaking, both of them looking out at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. You are quiet, she said finally. Thinking. About? About how I got here. All the choices that led to this moment. Do you regret them? Elias considered the question honestly. He thought about Emma and Sarah, the grief that still lived in his chest like a stone. Thought about giving away Senna to save Lianhua. Thought about the trials, the knives, the burning coals, the blood. Thought about wearing the bear claw necklace and everything it had cost. No, he said, I don't regret any of it. Even though we are losing our land, even though the future is uncertain, especially because of that. 2 months ago, I had no future, just an endless present of wandering and waiting to die. Now I have a purpose, people who matter to me, a reason to wake up tomorrow. Lianhua smiled. You saved my life, Elias Vance, but I think maybe I saved yours too. Yeah, I think maybe you did. They sat in comfortable silence as full dark fell and the stars multiplied overhead. Somewhere in the camp below, someone was singing, a traditional song, low and haunting, carrying the weight of history and the hope of survival. What will you do on the new land? Lianhua asked. Same thing I do here. Learn, help where I can, try to be worthy of the necklace they gave me. You are already worthy. You proved that. I proved I could survive trials. Being worthy is a daily thing, a choice you make every morning. Then I have no doubt you will make that choice. She stood, preparing to return to camp, but Elias stopped her with a question. Lianhua, that day in the canyon when I found you dying, did you know what would happen? Did you know saving you would lead to all this? She looked down at him, her face peaceful in the starlight. No, I knew only that I was dying and you chose to help me live. Everything else, the trials, the necklace, the negotiations, you standing with us against soldiers, that came from your choices, not from my knowledge. She paused. But I'm glad you made them. All of them. Me too. She left him alone on the ridge. Elias sat there for another hour, watching the stars wheel overhead, feeling the bear claws heavy around his neck. In the morning, they would begin the journey to the new land. A journey that was both ending and beginning, both loss and survival. But for now, in this moment, Elias simply existed, not running from the past, not dreading the future, just present in the cold night air with the knowledge that he belonged somewhere. That after 2 years of wandering, he had finally found home. Not a place exactly. Places could be taken away. But something deeper. A connection to people, to purpose, to the simple truth that one act of courage, when it costs everything, can change not just fate, but identity itself. The dawn came cold and clear, painting the canyon walls gold and red. The tribe assembled, belongings packed, children quiet and watchful, warriors forming protective positions around the vulnerable. Senna stood waiting, her painted symbols bright in the morning light. Elias mounted, feeling the bear claws against his chest, feeling the weight of the choices that had brought him here. Dakota rode up beside him, his face healed from the beatings but scarred forever. "You ready, brother?" Elias looked back at the canyon one last time, at the ceremonial circle where he'd been tested, at the ridge where warriors had once stood in judgment, at the camp that had become home. Then he looked forward, toward the uncertain future, toward the new land and the struggles that would come. "Yeah," he said, "I'm ready." They rode out together as the sun climbed higher, 70 warriors surrounding the tribe, protecting them as they'd promised to protect Elias when they laid their necklaces at his feet. The journey would take 3 days. The land they were going to would never be truly theirs. The restrictions they'd accepted would chafe and constrain, but they would survive, together. And Elias Vance, who'd given away his horse to save a dying woman, who'd endured trials that should have broken him, who'd chosen the hardest path because it was the honest one, rode with them, no longer a drifter haunted by loss, but a man reborn with purpose. Behind them, the old life ended. Ahead, the new life waited, uncertain but possible. And in that space between ending and beginning, Elias finally understood what Emma had been asking him in those final months before she faded away. "Papa, why are you always sad?" "Because I was waiting to die, sweetheart. You don't have to wait anymore." No, he didn't. The Wyoming Territory stretched before them, vast and indifferent, beautiful and cruel. But Elias rode into it with his chosen people, wearing their symbols, speaking their language, carrying their trust. One act of courage, given freely when it cost everything, had transformed a broken man into a brother, a drifter into a warrior, an ending into a beginning. And though the future held no promises, though the road ahead was hard and the destination uncertain, Elias rode toward it without fear, because he was no longer alone. And that made all the difference.